I wanted Bakuproject to be the game every Bakugan fan deserved. For years, Bakugan fans have waited for a modern online experience. When Bakuproject came along, it looked like that dream might finally become reality. But after spending countless hours in the game, watching the community, and seeing the same problems repeat themselves year after year, I've reached a point where I can't ignore them anymore. This isn't a hate video. It's a video made out of disappointment because I genuinely believe Bakuproject has the potential to be something incredible. Instead, it feels like a game that's been standing still while its community slowly loses hope. Unfortunately, many of these problems don't exist on their own. The lack of communication creates frustration. That frustration spreads throughout the community. And when players feel those frustrations aren't being addressed consistently, the environment only gets worse. You'd expect those concerns to be recognized and acted on, right? Before we start. Everything I'm about to say comes from my own experiences and concerns that I've consistently seen discussed within the community. If you've had a different experience, that's perfectly fine. The purpose of this video isn't to attack the developers or anyone involved personally. Making a game, especially a fan project, is difficult, but criticism is important when people genuinely care about something, and I care about Bakuproject. Because right now there are several issues that continue to push players away. Transition. Thankfully, even if these decisions created a lot of frustration within the community, the moderation team surely noticed what was happening and stepped in to reassure players, improve communication, and help calm the situation. Let's start with communication. Communication. If I had to point to one issue that sits above everything else, it's communication. For a project that's been around for years, players are still left wondering what's actually happening, what's being worked on, what's the roadmap, what bugs are currently being addressed, what features are coming next. Most of the time, nobody knows. That silence creates speculation. Speculation becomes frustration. Frustration turns into arguments because nobody has clear answers. People don't expect massive announcements every week. Sometimes a simple update saying, "Here's what we're currently working on," is enough. Good communication builds trust. Silence slowly destroys it. Poor communication doesn't just leave players confused, it changes how the community behaves. When players don't know what's happening, they begin filling in the blanks themselves. Rumors spread. Arguments become more common. Trust begins to disappear. That's exactly why moderation becomes so important. Because a frustrated community needs active leadership. Unfortunately, that brings us to the next problem, a beta that's been around for years. This is probably one of the biggest reasons people have become frustrated. Bakuproject has been in beta for years. Now don't get me wrong, I understand making a game takes time, especially a fan project. Nobody expects a polished masterpiece overnight, but after years of development, people naturally start asking questions. Many players have financially supported this project because they believed in its vision. They weren't just buying access to a game, they were investing in what they hoped would become the definitive online Bakugan experience. The problem is that for many of those supporters, the progress hasn't felt proportional to the amount of time that's passed. Content updates have felt slow, core issues continue to linger. Outside of PvP, many players feel there's very little to keep them engaged. So after years of development, it's understandable why supporters ask, what are we actually getting for the money we're putting into this? Supporting a project should feel like you're helping build something that's steadily moving forward. Instead, many players feel like they're still waiting for the experience they originally believed they were supporting. That doesn't mean the developers aren't working hard. It means the visible progress hasn't met the expectations that naturally come with years of development and financial support. Perception matters. And right now, many players feel the game simply hasn't evolved enough to justify the amount of time and money invested by the community. Outside of PvP, what's there? If you're someone who enjoys competitive battles, you'll probably get more hours out of the game than most. But if you're a casual player, the experience becomes repetitive very quickly. You're grinding, repeating the same activities, farming, waiting for updates, logging off, then doing it all over again. A healthy online game needs content for different kinds of players. Not everyone wants to spend all their time battling other people. Right now, PvP feels like the only real endgame, and if PvP isn't your thing, there just isn't much left. Competitive has become frustrating. Competition should reward skill. Instead, many players feel like they're fighting the community just as much as they're fighting their opponents. Some of the complaints that continue to surface include verbal abuse, harassment, players repeatedly spam challenging others, deck swapping immediately before battles to lure opponents into bad matchups, using bug decks during tournaments, an overall attitude where winning sometimes seems more important than fair competition. Whether you've personally experienced these things or not, the fact that they're recurring discussions within the community says something. New players notice it, and many simply choose not to participate. Bug abuse. Every online game has bugs. That's unavoidable. The issue is when players intentionally exploit those bugs for an advantage. No competitive player wants to question whether they lost because their opponent outplayed them, or because someone abused an exploit. Competitive integrity depends on trust. Without trust, people stop taking competition seriously. Moderation communication alone isn't enough. When a community becomes frustrated, moderation becomes even more important. The problem is that many players feel that hasn't happened. Instead of easing tensions, many believe they've watched the same issues continue for months or even years. Complaints about harassment, unsportsmanlike conduct, bug abuse, inconsistent rulings. These conversations continue to appear again and again. Whether every complaint is valid isn't really the point. The point is that these concerns have become common enough to shape how many players view the community. At some point, players stop asking, "Why did this happen?" and start asking, "Why does it keep happening?" That's a dangerous question for any online game, because once players begin believing their concerns aren't being addressed consistently, trust starts disappearing, and rebuilding that trust is much harder than maintaining it in the first place. The burden of proof. I completely understand why moderators need evidence before taking action. Nobody wants false accusations, but many players feel the standard of proof has become so high that very little actually results in consequences. Not everyone records every match. Not every interaction happens in public chat. Not every exploit is easy to capture. If players begin believing that reporting problems won't accomplish anything, eventually, they stop reporting them altogether. Why this matters. None of these issues exist by themselves. Poor communication creates frustration. Frustration creates division. Weak moderation allows those frustrations to grow. Bug abuse damages competitive integrity. A lack of meaningful content pushes casual players away. Each problem feeds into the next until you end up with a community that spends more time arguing than enjoying the game. That's not healthy, and it's not sustainable. Final thoughts. I don't think Bakuproject has a Bakugan problem. I think it has a leadership problem. The foundation is actually good. That's what makes all of this so frustrating. The potential is there, the community is passionate, people are willing to financially support the project because they believe in what it could become. But potential only matters if it's followed by progress. Players deserve communication, players deserve transparency, players deserve meaningful content, players deserve consistent moderation, players deserve a competitive environment that's fair. And if people continue supporting a game financially while it's still in beta years later, it's understandable for them to expect visible progress and an experience that reflects that investment. Because despite everything I've said today, I don't want Bakuproject to fail. I want it to succeed. I want it to become the Bakugan game that fans have dreamed about for years. But until these issues are acknowledged and meaningfully addressed, I don't think that future is possible. If you're part of the Bakuproject community, I'd genuinely like to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you think needs to change? Let's have that discussion, because the community deserves better, and so does the game.